when we're talking about real covenants at law, right? Real covenants at law, the first question we ask ourselves, is there horizontal privity? That is there privy of estate between A and B? That's our very first question. The only way to establish horizontal privity of estate is for the covenant to be created as part of a land transaction, right? It doesn't really matter what that land transaction looks like. In this case, it's Amy sells Blackacre to Bob and reserves a covenant on Blackacre. That's fine. You can also do it with a subdivision. That is, imagine one person owns, a huge plot of land. He slices them up and he sells, one piece to him, one piece to her, one piece to her, right? And each transaction has a covenant placed on it. Yes. It's a really good question. So if you didn't hear it, how many stage zeros? And by stage zero, he means before this diagram even exists, what happens before? So I would think the obvious one is this one, Amy sells Blackacre to Bob, right? That's one. Number two is with a subdivision where one person chops a piece of land. We'll have another question on the list today. I'm not going to do it yet, but it's another one where a person divides up a piece of property between himself and another person. So those are at least three I can think of. I can get creative. Maybe there are more. I don't know. That's three come to mind right now. But a good question. Okay. Okay, so again, the first step in creating a real covenant law must be horizontal privity, right? You need to have horizontal privity. Okay? Everyone with me. After you've established a covenant law and created horizontal privity, you're not done. Next, you have to ask yourselves, does excuse me, does the burden run? That is, does the burden bind future property holders? How does the burden run, for example, from Bob to Carl? In our example, we need two things. You first have to have horizontal privity. You always need that. And then you also need to have vertical privity. Okay. If you don't have horizontal privity in the first instance, you don't have a covenant. So the burden will not run. Again, if you don't have horizontal privity in the first instance, you have no covenant, so there's no burden to run. You might have vertical privity, that is, Bob sells his entire estate to Carl, but unless you have horizontal privity first, there's no real covenant created. All right. What about the benefit? It's much easier for the benefit to run. For the benefit to run, you have to have horizontal privity and some relationship between Amy and Diane. If you notice, I've been very sort of hesitant about what that relationship is. You're going to see why today. It's tricky. You can call it privity if you want, but it's something, right? That there's some interest from A to B. I'm sorry, from Amy to Diane. That's how the benefit runs. It's very easy. Okay. So what happens then if Carl owns Blackacre and Amy owns Whiteacre? In what circumstance can Diane sue Carl? You need three things. You have to have the horizontal privity between Amy and Bob. You need to have vertical privity between Bob and Carl for the burden to run. And you need some privity between Amy and Diane for the benefit to run. If all three of those tests are satisfied, then Diane would be able to sue Carl to enforce the covenant. Everyone with me? Now, all this is talking about a real covenant at law, right? In which in which the remedy is damages. I have not yet mentioned the equitable servitude, which is a topic we'll be covering today. But keep in mind, and this is very important, keep in mind, even if you don't meet the formalities of a real covenant law, that is, you don't satisfy the privity requirements, a court can still find that an equitable servitude was created and enforce that in equity. Again, even if you don't meet all these crazy arrows with privity and this and that, right? A court can still come along and say, aha, equitable servitude, I'm going to force it anyway. So these questions are very hard to answer. It's almost like, I don't want to say it like rule against perpetuities, because just when you think you're done, you're not done. right? You might think you're done, but you're not done. So even if you walk through the covenant analysis correctly, and you find that there's no enforceable real covenant law, you then have to pivot to equitable servitude. If you stop at covenants, you're not getting full credit. It happens every year. I grade the exams. I see it every year. People just stop. Oh, there's no covenant law. The plaintiff loses. Oh, you're not done yet. You got to keep going all the way. Okay. Everyone okay with that? Nothing new. Just review. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know you didn't say the first two for the horizontal privity with the intent to buy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just always assuming.
You know what? You shouldn't always assume. You should not always assume because the case today makes that a little bit trickier. But they're usually satisfied, especially under the modern standard. They're always going to be satisfied. But you're right. So just to repeat his question, I sort of assumed for horizontal privity that the first two factors satisfy, that there's intent to bind, and the restriction touches and concerns the land. But there might be some questions where it doesn't, and you should at least spell those out. But in 90% of the time, they're going to be satisfied. All right, now let's do the first question, which is a little bit. This is question number 1, please. And I'll just tell you in advance. This is what's called a mutually restrictive covenant. A mutually restrictive covenant. All right. Take a look at question 1. Where'd the thing go? Does it give you the option or no? What? This is so strange. This consistently crashes my evening section. It's never once crashed my day section. I don't know why. Give me 30 seconds. I'll bring it back up. I'm really sorry. That's just some weird like capacity issue where they're prepared for this app in the day but not in the evening. I have no idea why. Okay, section B. Resume class. Okay, let's try this one more time. There it is. Okay. Try question number 1, please. No. Okay. Okay. All right. Another 10 seconds. Get over your answers and I'll stop it. Okay. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of an HOA, homeowner association. You probably live there, right? You may not have thought though how an HOA came into existence, why it came into existence. At some point in the past, there was a common owner, one person who owned a huge plot of land. And he divided that plot up into subdivisions, small individual lots. And each time he created a subdivision on that transaction, he created a real covenant law. So that way you have horizontal privity. And each person who purchases one of those plots of land goes into vertical privity with his predecessor. Therefore, in these HOAs, the burdens run with the land. Okay. But it's a little bit more complicated. Because if you live in an HOA, and let's say it says, you have to have only residential housing, your house has to be so many square feet, so many feet from the front yard, it's called frontage and so on. It's burdening you, right? It's creating a burden on you. It's a restriction. But it also benefits you. How? Quiet, right? Green space, right? Everyone in the HOA, in theory at least, benefits from these covenants. So you are simultaneously being burdened on your lot and being benefited on your lot. In one of these subdivisions, every property is both a servient tenement and a dominant tenement. Just let that sink in for a minute, right? We always show our graph over here, Amy and Bob, whatever graph, right? They're two different sides to the equation. Sure, right? In a very simple example, there are only two sides to the equation, right? This is the benefit side, that's the burden side. But in reality, these graphics don't really help. They break down real quick because each side is both a burden and benefit. Okay, what does that mean? You have to actually analyze every question on both sides. In order for the benefit and burdens to run, both there will have to be, in order for the burden to run here and here, you need vertical privity on both sides. Again, if we actually take this seriously, for the burdens to run among these four people, you'll need vertical privity on both sides. Which is why if you go into an HOA, it's going to be rare that you buy something less than a fee simple, right? You're going to buy the lot yourself. I suppose you can rent it, a leasehold, something like that, but generally you're buying the full interest to satisfy the vertical privity. Yes, sir.
When you talk about HOA, you're talking about Amy as a 10-acre lot.
Amy has a what?
Amy has a 10-acre lot.
Right.
Sells it off
One at a time to different people.
to the big people.
Yeah.
So would there actually be a Diane? Because they would.
Eventually, Amy may sell her interest. Yeah. But if Amy dies,
But even if Amy doesn't, oh, I see.
Amy might die. Amy might sell it. Yeah. There's no guarantee the original owner, the OG, if you will, continues owning the entire lot. So even Amy's share might go down the line. So everyone get that point, right?
But everybody that was in horizontal would also be.
Correct. Horizontal privity is established at the outset, right? So long as Amy does things correctly at the beginning and she creates horizontal privity, that's good forever. That doesn't go away. What then matters is whether there's sufficient vertical privity on both sides. All right, everyone just get that point. Let's go back to our question, right? Question number one. What we got here? Question number one. All right. The results we got. All right. This is good. All right. So the question is, A and B decide we will mutually restrict our lots to single family residences. They sign an agreement saying that. What's the problem here? There's simply, Aaron?
There's no privity of the state. Like
Why?
There wasn't a conveyance.
Yes. This is just a promise enforced between two parties. It's not attached to a conveyance of property. Therefore, there's no privity of estate. And if there's no privity of estate, there cannot be horizontal privity. So the answer here is false. Yes, sir.
Would you find privity of contract?
That was my next question. You nailed it, right? Is there privity of contract here, Aaron?
I mean, I would say yes.
Absolutely. There's nothing stopping A and B from making a contract to limit their usage. But a contract between A and B will not bind successors. Only those two are in privity. Keep in mind in this class, all the rules you learn in contracts govern here, right? If two people want to make a contract that meets regular contract law, they can. But when you were studying contracts, did you ever study a contract that binds successors? No. The covenants are unique. It's a unique thing to real property, right? If you want to benefit from the real property rules, you got to play by our rules. If you want to benefit from contract rules, go make a contract. So this would be enforceable, no question, but it would not be there would not be privity of estate, and there would not be then horizontal privity. Very good. All right, think about it. Most of you got this one right, 75% or so. Good. All right, let me do the next question then. And again, question two continues from question number one. I can't show them both on the screen; it won't fit. So just show question number two continues. Okay, question two says, B sells a lot to C. C builds an apartment. Does the burden run from B to C? Okay. All right. All right. Another 10 seconds or so. Excuse me. All right. Let's do this one.
No, the burden of.
Please tell me why.
Because in order for the burden to run to C, you would need horizontal privity. And
Correct.
vertical privity, you don't have horizontal.
Perfect. The answer here is no. Verb will not run from B to C. Good. And the reason why is that there's no horizontal privity. If there's no horizontal privity, you do not have a real covenant law. It doesn't exist. The burden cannot run. All right, good. 90%. I'm happy with that. Okay. Let's do a number. I'm sorry? That's okay. All right, let's look at question number 3. This one's tricky. A. Remember A. A builds an apartment house. Can C sue A for damages? This question's tricky. Take your time with it. Yes or no? And don't ask me any questions. Just answer it. We'll go through it all. I know your hands are like going up. Again, A builds an apartment house. Can C sue A for damages? All right, another 10 seconds. All right. So we got on this one. Okay. All right. So who here said no that C cannot sue A for damages? All right, Latricia? Why'd you say no? But we're talking about a benefit, aren't we? We're asking here, does the benefit run from B to C? Do you need horizontal privity for the benefit to run? Okay. Who here put yes that they can sue? Linz?
Because if there was a previous contract, they're just still coming back down here.
You're both right. You're both right. I think her answer is probably better, but your answer is also correct because we're in property class. Now, I'm mostly being facetious, but I want to walk through this one step at a time, right? But you both nailed it. You both nailed it. So the most straightforward answer we ask ourselves, does the benefit run from B to C, right? Under the law of covenants? The answer has to be no. And I think you probably agree with that, right? The answer is no because there's not horizontal privity. If you start off on the wrong foot, without the right privity at the beginning, horizontal, you're done. You never get any covenants, right? So Latricia is exactly right. But now say your answer again, because I think you make the alternate point.
My point was there's still privy of contract,
Yes.
so
Right. So here's how I want you to look at it, right? A and B made a contract. May not be privy of the state, but there's a contract, no question, right? A is bound by that contract. When B sold his lot to C, B basically assigned to C his contractual rights. This is assignment, straight up contracts, right? I think Zach, you might have asked me an assignment last week. I think you did. Remember it's fading, right? But this is just a question of assignment, and because C stepped into the shoes of B, C can exercise B's contractual rights. Again, it's a simple assignment. If C steps into B's contractual rights, if C steps into B's shoes, C can exercise B's contractual rights, which would include privity of contract against A. I want to see, again, this class sort of blends contract and property in a way that you may not have thought of before. That's why I put this question here. Emma, tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't know. So in the reason A can sue, or C can sue A is because,
Under law of contract.
yeah, and is this to do with the fact that we don't need vertical privity, we just need privity?
No,
as
no,
part of the
this has nothing to do. No, this. Okay, so that's a third option, right? So are you saying that even in the absence of horizontal privity, the benefit can run with just vertical? Is that what you're?
Yes,
Why do you think that works?
because in my notes I wrote, if the benefit goes from A, well, I have it from A to D.
Right.
then
But does that require horizontal in the first place, though?
I don't know, does it?
It does.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I know. A student in my other class made the exact same point. That's why I wanted to run you through it, right? Unless you have horizontal privity at the outset, what's step 0, to use Casey's question before, you don't have a real covenant. And if you don't have a real covenant, no burdens run, and then no benefits run. Right? That's why that step 0 matters a lot. You need to have that initial transaction in which horizontal is created. That's the very first step, right? You need to have that horizontal privity, which we do not have here. So to Lindsay's point a moment ago, his answer does not depend on benefits and burdens running. It depends entirely on the law of contract. The fact is, C goes into the shoes of B. Right? That's what happens with an assignment. Think of an assignment of a lease also, right? You have a new person taking over the full interest. And when that happens, the original contract is enforceable and A can be sued. Now, if A were to sell Whiteacre to somebody else, this doesn't work, right? If A sells a Whiteacre to Diane, then Diane cannot be sued. Yeah.
That was C's new contractual privity with A to destroy B.
B would no longer be in privity with A. That's correct. But you see why the law of covenants, the law of covenants is so important. Because this stuff about privity lasts one generation, right? Just the current owners. Covenants last forever, right? They go on and on and on. Don't ask me at rap, right? So someone actually asked me at rap. It's like, oh my God. They actually asked me at rap in my morning class, right? But this will go on and on and on. Jose?
Get a similar question like this for an essay, would you have to mention both of them?
I think you do. And I'm going to give you a third option too, which doesn't work. I'll give it to you. Anyone know what the third option is? Anyone think of it? Someone got it in my other class. What's the third option of how this might work? Yeah.
Like if C had actual notice of the promise.
Yep. What could you enforce?
In that case, it would be,
What's that thing called? That thing.
like a easement.
No, it's so close, so close. It begins with an E. You even got the right letter. Yeah. Yes, equitable servitude. Is that what you meant? Okay, so let me just spell this one out. That's not correct, but it's a good guess, right? And I'll explain why. So remember I told you, even if you don't meet the sort of requirements of real covenant law, always revert back as a backup plan to equitable servitude, which do not require the privity requirements. Okay, so in theory, at least, a court could imply an equitable servitude to block the construction of the apartment complex here. Does anyone see why that doesn't work here? Basically, look how I asked the question. Look what what words I put in the question, why that doesn't work. What did I ask for? Say it again.
Extra damage.
And you get an award of damages for violation of equitable servitude. Just an injunction. So I anticipated that, which is why I blocked the question off this way. So again, the topic of covenants, I think, is especially difficult because it's like a forked path, right? Every way you go, there's another thing cutting you off. You have to consider horizontal privity, vertical privity, privity on the benefit side, privity of the contract, and then is there an equitable servitude? What's the correct remedy? There are so many different branches you can take. These questions can meander. A question over there somewhere? Yes, in back. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could. I don't know that an apartment is a nuisance. I mean, it might disturb the peace and quiet, I suppose. But that maybe I don't know. I saw a hand over there somewhere. Was it Zach and then Aaron?
You see, if B convinces C to buy the lot, based at least in part upon the presence of this agreement, and A then violates it, can C sue C under material misrepresentation?
I don't know. That's your contracts professor. No, I'm not being facetious. I really don't know. I'm not sure. But it's let me put it this way: if the answer to your question on my exam is material misrepresentation, you've gotten the question wrong. Like I swear, I once had a student actually cite the UCC on a final exam. Like what the student did not. No, this is wrong. It's like whatever. If you're saying UCC, that's not the right answer. That's wrong. Aaron.
So maybe misremembering from the chapter, but so at common law, for sure, an equitable servitude would require the remedy to be an injunction.
Correct.
But in the modern doctrine.
Oh yes, the modern law. I hate the modern stuff because you can do whatever you want. Nothing matters, right? Everything's done. But the reason why, again, this really won't matter is if you're in the modern law, you can enforce everything, right? So presume, at least for these questions, you're in the common law jurisdiction. I'll tell you in the exam, but I almost always ask you at common law because the modern rules is you can do whatever you want. Nothing matters, right? Whatever remedy you want, privity doesn't matter. We'll enforce it. It's all about fairness and squishy stuff. I don't like the squishies. I like law. I like actual rules, right? I love teaching property more than common law. You don't believe me? It's true. Because they're rules. I can teach you rules. They're hard rules, but they're rules. Okay, what else? I saw another hand somewhere. I'm actually sensing this is clicking, right? Maybe I'm false optimism, but this actually seems to be clicking. It's a very logical topic. It's almost like the future interests. There are rules. If you get the rules, then you get it. If you don't get the rules, it's going to be hard. You have to keep the rules in play. All right, can I move on? Any other questions on 3? Yeah, we're half an hour in, 3 questions down, but that's about what I expected. All right, let's do question number 4, please. Question number 4. All right, and this starts a new line of questions. Okay, go ahead. Excuse me. All right, another 10 seconds or so, please. Stop it here. All right, that's what we got. Okay, good. Pleasantly surprised. Okay, good. So let's look at this one. This is a classic subdivision case. If you actually think about Neponsit, our reading for today, was a subdivision case. They're very similar, where there's a common owner, O, the original owner, right, O, who divides a parcel up in half. He gives 1 acre to A and 1 acre to himself. Okay. Even though he's giving it to himself, that still counts. That's still a transaction for purposes of horizontal privity. And he places in each piece of property both a benefit and burden. What is it? The benefit is, hey, you get to live in a nice residential community. The burden is you can only build residential property, right? So each lot is both simultaneously dominant and servient at the same time. And yes, there's horizontal privity. They've laid the foundation. There's an intent to bind, touch concern. All that stuff is usually satisfied. This creates real covenant law. Okay? Everyone understand that one? That one, almost all of you got that one right. Good. All right, number 5 is going to mess with you, so I'm just warning you in advance. Okay? I'm sorry. We had a lot of fun with this one in the afternoon. You're not going to like it, but here it is. B takes A's parcel by adverse possession. Are A and B in vertical privity? Okay, this one we'll have some fun with. It'll make your head hurt. All right, let me I'll stop in about 5 seconds. But please put your answers in. Okay. Let's walk through this one. All right. So who said no that they're non-private public? Yes, Greg. Why'd you say no?
Privity means something different here than it does under after possession.
Good. So flashback to our first week of class, right? How was privity used in that topic?
Two successive owners.
What's that thing called?
Attacking.
That's it. Tacking. Good. Right. And how were two successive owners tack? How would they tack together? What would they need to have?
An agreement.
Yeah, agreement. Good. So how is privity being used here, though? Craig?
No agreement.
Okay, so your answer is with adverse possession, there's no agreement. Okay, Aaron, what do you think?
I think that when we established adverse possession, it vested a new title in the land. So it completely wiped out anything that was going on that parcel of land before that.
Okay, so did it wipe out the covenant?
Yes.
Okay, Lee, what do you think? I'm gonna get there in a minute. You want to say something?
I had that for vertical privity, you have to transfer your full interest in the land,
Okay.
and taking an adverse possession, you don't transfer the
What's transferred?
here.
Yeah.
That
What actually goes on to B? What does B get? It goes somewhere, doesn't it? Black acre goes somewhere.
that parcel of land that he's.
Anyone else? Yeah, Anthony.
Yes, for that.
Okay, so it's not, yeah, let's go to yeses. All right, because I want to hear from the yeses.
The reason I put yes, because vertical privity, to establish vertical privity, you have to transfer the entire estate. So when you take it through adverse possession, you get title to the land, you still take the entire estate.
All right, Linz, what do you think about that? Because this is almost the opposite of what you're saying. I'm actually glad you guys went back to back. Okay, tell me why. Tell me why you don't agree.
So, there's no, interest that's transferred. He just took it. It wasn't.
Does vertical privity require the interest to go from A to B, though? Or just that the interest is transferred in general?
That requires some, no, that's the other.
This is actually a hard question. Anyone else put yes? Want to comment? Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone else want to jump in? All right. So the book, oh yeah, Casey, what do you think?
I was thinking, there's different ways to easement. I was thinking, like, in adverse possession easement, I think they were similar with this one, that it would wind up being no because you're actually taking over that land. So just like a merge.
You wipe it out.
Yeah, just like a merge.
And this was Leah's question there. All right, last one, Nick. Go ahead.
But isn't it, when I think that's Robert, in the case, they accepted all the promises.
So don't they take in whatever terms that A had? In other words, let's say A had a life estate, and then B adversely possesses it. He takes a life estate also, subject to A's life. You mean the termination that we mean by relinquishment?
Yeah.
Abandonment's really hard to show, and I don't even know if 10 years is enough to abandon. Assume abandonment's off the table. It's very hard to show abandonment. Just trust me. Yeah, abandonment's hard to satisfy. Just assume I'm right for the present. Assume abandonment's off the table. Okay, you're not wrong, but it's actually really hard to establish. People can not use their property; they get to keep it, short of adverse possession. Okay. All right, so let me walk through this because this is actually a hard question, and I'll tell you what the book thinks. I'll tell you why. Maybe I mostly agree. I'm not sure. Okay. So what the book says, a couple things, right? I think Aaron made this point. When you acquire Blackacre through adverse possession, you're basically getting a new title altogether, right? It's as if a new estate is created, right? So the book says you cannot have vertical privity if a new estate's being created. But what does it mean to create a new estate? With adverse possession, you take the property in the terms of the person against whom you squatted. So, for example, let's say someone has only a life estate, and you squat on a person's life estate. You don't get a fee simple. You get a life estate per v measured by the life of the tenant. So you sort of do take it on his terms. Does that mean you have vertical privity? So the book says no, that you must assume the entire state, and there must be some sort of you must assume the same estate that the predecessor had. Okay. You could also say that privity means some sort of agreement, whereas an adverse possessor is hostile and aggressive. So I think there's probably more support for answering this question no than yes. But I hear the yeses, I hear the A's. The A's do have a fair point. And depending how we define vertical privity, I could probably go either way in this one. So I think either one is right, but I think the book says the answer is no. All right. Was that? Well, look, no, I mean, these are actually very hard questions. And the reason why is it's not like anyone ever defined vertical privity in a statute, right? The phrase vertical privity is not real. It's just made up by law professors, right? It's not an actual thing. So defining privity is not obvious. And there are certain policy considerations to think of when you're allowing an adverse possessor. I mean, let's say you really want to be an adverse possessor. Good. You want to adversely possess a house and subdivision? Good for you. Now you're subject to the covenants, right? Or maybe to Casey's question, if you adversely possess Blackacre, are you going to be the only lot in the entire neighborhood not subject to the covenant? So I think, Casey, to your question, I don't think the covenant terminates, right? I think you probably argue it does. But I think you actually would take it subject to the burdens. Well, if the answer is yes to this question, right, then you would take it subject to the burdens. If the answer is no, then you don't. And then the one block, this one adverse possessor is exempt from the HOA. So I think you either way. I know you hate that, don't you? You hate that answer. Yeah, it's Leah. I know. I'm sorry. I know. This question's. Go ahead. Right. So if I think, well, look. So if we take the book's position that adverse possession creates a new estate altogether, it would terminate the covenant. That's correct. If the answer to this question is yes, that is that there is vertical privity, then the squatter would then be subject to the covenant. You understand the two different angles, right? Let's say this again. If the book position is correct, right? If the book position is correct, that there's no vertical privity, right? Then the covenant's terminated. I'm drinking notes for myself. Again, if there is no vertical privity, the burden cannot run, then Blackacre is exempt from the covenant. If there is vertical privity, then the burden runs and the covenant can be enforced. So the answer to your question, Talia, depends on how you answer question number, was it up to 4? No, or yeah, 5, I'm sorry, question 5. Now, is that less confusing?
Yeah.
Which one did you put, if I can ask?
I put no because they didn't have it because the covenant.
But some of you did put yes. And if you did put yes, that means the covenant survives. Do you see that point now?
Yeah, they just step in the shoes of the.
They step into shoes. Yes.
I thought of it like the neighborhood thing with somebody adversely possesses a house.
Right.
Not like they're never gonna have to pay the HOE fees or anything like that again.
Well, look, if you answer this question no, right, and you adversely possess a house in the HOA, then you would not be subject to the assessments, the fees.
I just feel like the courts would
Now let's be real for a minute, right? Casey, I'll get you in a second. If you're squatting in HOA, anyone in the HOA can eject you. So one of them is going to kick you out, right? It's going to be very hard to make it to 10 years in a subdivision because someone will kick you out. Think of what happened to Mr. Robinson. He was kicked out in 2 weeks, right? Casey?
Actually, with the sermon, at that point, we could no longer say that they were saved in such an extent. They're not even important, so
Oh, I see your point. Yeah. I mean, look, a neighbor will enforce it or the HOA itself will enforce it. Someone's going to enforce it. So, I mean, it's just a fun hypothetical, but it's unlikely to ever actually happen. Right? Yes, sir.
It's a little off what that is, but what if he took A's land after the foreclosure sale? Would there be vertical privilege?
Isn't that sort of the facts in Neponsit? Wasn't there foreclosure? So if you take Blackacre through Neponsit, I'm sorry, if you take a Blackacre through a foreclosure sale, you take it subject to whatever covenants exist. You don't wipe out the covenants. But I think it's just unique that adverse possession would, under the book's view, would wipe out the covenant. That's the book's view. Craig? I like yes, but what do I know? No, I mean, I would actually treat this the same way with a foreclosure, to Anthony's point. I think if you want to be a squatter, you got to take it as you find it. That's where I lean, but I get the book's point. But what do I know? No one else in this one. It's a good question, right? It really makes you think these issues through. Yes, Brian. I go either way. Either way, I'm happy. They got to justify it. They got to explain why. Yes, sir, AJ. You sure? Okay. Okay. Look at question number 6, please. Which again is a continuation. No. Okay. Yeah. Look at question 6, please. Which is a little bit different than question 5, but maybe it's the same. I don't know. I'm sorry. Oh, same. Yeah. Continue the facts. Yeah. It's the factor 6 continue from 5. Okay. All right. Another 5 seconds. Okay. Stop it here. Right. So I think if we take the book's view on this one, right? If we take the book's view that there's no vertical privity, then the burn does not run. Right? If we reject the book's view and we say there is vertical privity, there's also horizontal privity, so the burden would run. Everyone see that? All right. Now let's do 7. 7 is going to be a little bit more fun. Fun's the wrong word. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say fun. Same facts as before. Question number 7, please. You're doing pretty well on these. I'm actually pleased. I'm happy with this calling on people. This is working better than the old one, so I'm actually good with this. Chief, please go ahead. Same facts. Yes, same facts as previous.
Well, you said it was no.
I said if you agree with the book,
Okay.
the answer is no.
So with the other-
If you're the other side, the answer is yes. So the answers to 6 and 7, well, I'm sorry, 5 and 6 will parallel each other, depending which view you take. I think everyone can be justified. Books, the author of the book are not gospel. They're not perfect. Okay, let's look at number 7. Does the benefit run from A to B? All right, another 10 seconds, please. Okay, let me stop it here. This one is tricky, and it's going to make you think a little bit. All right, so first off, who said, let's do the no's first. Who said no? All right, Aaron, what did you say no?
I kind of, I guess, want to continue to go on with the book theory
Sure.
that kind of he got a completely new title in the land, so
So nothing runs at all.
Yeah.
All right. Brian, what you said you put no? Nick? All right, let's go to the yeses. All right. Yeah, go for tell me Anthony, why yes?
The reason I put yes for that one is because it's horizontal privity and it's any type of transfer. So whether it's a hostile transfer, not a hostile transfer, it's average, it's still a transfer.
I'm sorry, you said horizontal privity. Is that what you meant to say?
You need to have horizontal privity between A and O.
A and O, which we have.
Which you have.
Okay.
Any type of transfer that satisfies enough.
Between A and B. Oh, so you say any type of transfer between A and B is enough. So even if there's no vertical privity, there's still this sort of weird privity.
Sort with that possession. I mean, it's whether it's hostile.
Let's go to our diagram for a minute, okay? So again, if you've noticed, I've been very sort of uncomfortable labeling this, the benefit side. I've always been very hesitant. And the reason why is this question. What the heck is this for the benefit to run? Go read your book. It's not very clear what they're actually been talking about. They're sort of just there's a whatever, an interest conveyed, right? Something, what they say in the book, I forgot that diagram, I have it here. It's less than the full something or other. I don't have it here. But anyway, it's in your book. It's on that, whatever page it was. It's 12. Craig, your hand was up also. Yeah, here. Yeah, so yeah, let me actually with the book's definitions in their chart. This is from last class. There's it, yeah. So privity between promisee and assignee, known as vertical privity, meaning succeeds to any interest from original promisee. Succeeds to any interest from original promisee. Does not say transfer. It does not say, again, this is the definition they made up because I complained in the last one, right? I think I'll email them after class today, but the book definition is, again, read it. Succeeds, and they underlined it, to any interest from original promisee. Anthony, is that what you were getting at?
I don't say any kind of privity between would be A and B.
Yeah.
There's some type of
So something, right? Curious, Linz, what do you think on this one? Because you two are opposite in the last one.
Because of that exact same reason. It doesn't matter.
So you think yes on this one?
Yeah, I said yes. I started with no.
You switched. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Aaron, what do you think?
I can switch my answer to yes.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
If we change the wording on that to succeeds any interest from or
Conveyed.
predecessor in interest.
Yeah. In other words, if it's not a hostile, aggressive, active adverse possession. Zach, what do you think?
Going off of Aaron's title comment from the board, if a new estate is created through a fee, then there is no succession of interest. If one interest terminates and another begins.
So again, it says succeeds to any interest. What does succeeds mean? Can that be a new title altogether or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. Who else? Yes, right here.
I think, it also says interest from original promisee. So if you're adversely possessing, you're not getting anything from the original promisee.
No, it's hostile, in fact.
So then,
Now keep in mind, your beloved editors didn't think of any of this stuff when they wrote that definition. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to email them after class or when I wake up tomorrow morning about this because I don't think maybe they did. I don't know. Anyone, tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely getting this wrong. I don't know.
I thought even to go back to the original rules of adverse possession, they would just get what the other person had.
But is it getting what the other person has or a new title altogether? See, it's both, right?
But I thought with adverse possession, it's even it's a new title. You were the one, but if you adverse possess, you only have what that person had in the life.
Correct. You have the life estate, whatever they had.
Yeah.
Which would suggest that you do succeed to their interest, and the benefit might then run.
Yes.
So look, the requirements on the right side, the burden side, are a little more tough, right? So I think on the other side, it's hard to say vertical privity. I think you could. On the benefit side, I lean actually towards saying yes. I don't know. Who else? Who else thinks about this? Yeah.
Wouldn't you still run if a lesser interest was carved out?
A lesser interest carved out. But adverse possession is actually the entire kit and caboodle. You get everything, don't you? Yes, Brian.
So are you saying that even if there's a new like title that gets created without this possession, the benefit may still run, but the benefit may just be nothing?
Well, the benefit is that Diane or Carl, whoever else, could sue to enforce the covenant if their neighbor builds an apartment. No, the point is, if you get the benefit, in other words, if you're the squatter, right, and you obtain black acre through adverse possession, you might get the benefit and you can sue your neighbor for being a bad neighbor, building an apartment complex. In other words, they can't sue the adverse possessor, but the adverse possessor could potentially sue the neighbor who did things right. I don't know if I'm right here. I want to just be candid. I think I can go either way on this question. I'm going to email the books people to see what they think, and maybe they'll say, Blackman, you're wrong, and I'll come back and I'll tell you. No, it happens. Sometimes I screw things up, but I try my best. Yeah, Casey. It might be. That might actually be the answer, because in general, it's easier for the benefit to run than for the burden to run, right? So it might be in this case. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but it might be that the burden will not run to the squatter, but the squatter does get the benefit, which seems very injudicious, very, very unfair. Yes.
Page 8.2, the video says that the horizontal privity of a state is required for the burden of the covenant to run,
There is horizontal here,
but it's not because adverse possession.
but the original grantor, divided up his lot.
Yeah, but O doesn't have anything with the adverse possessor. Right?
Doesn't matter. In this question, I think like 2 questions above, he subdivided his lot. There you have horizontal privity. And if there's horizontal privity at the outset, there's always going to be horizontal privity. You don't lose it. Remember, this is question, was it 4 or 5? Yeah, go to question 4 in your notes. Question 4 is they subdivided. Horizontal privity satisfied. The only question is whether the benefits and burdens run. That's the only question here. That make sense, Flocky? But do you agree that there's horizontal privity here? You see why? I'll go back up on the screen. But no, but you never need horizontal privity going down. You only need horizontal privity once at the outset with the original subdivider. And once you have horizontal privity, the covenant's created. Then we ask going down as a vertical. You never need horizontal privity with this squatter, with the subsequent purchaser. You only need it once when the subdivision's created. What else? She?
So an adverse possessor, let's say, if you kind of parallel in like the adverse who possesses a property that's HOA controlled, his burden is still to the HOA, correct?
Assuming the burden runs. If the book is right, the burden does not run, then he would not be subject to the HOA fees. Right? If the book position is correct, then he would not be subject to the HOA. Son? Did your hand go up? I'm sorry. I thought I saw it go up. Yep. Correct. This is what I told Casey a minute ago, right? In any realistic situation, the HOA will kick out the squatter in 2 days. Right? As soon as they find out, HOAs are not slow, right? They're slow unless something bad, then they can move real fast, right? When something they don't like, they move real quick. Like if it's a day after Christmas and your decorations are up, they'll find you and tell you to take down your decorations. Our manager used to send a notice every November 1st, Halloween, decorations down. Right? Just if you would wait till New Year, so January 2nd, take your Christmas decorations out. Like it was very. She actually mellowed out. Apparently, I think she got in trouble from the people on the board, but she mellowed out. She's very nice. They're doing their job, but they try to enforce the rules. Casey. Uh-oh. Well, I mean, it's almost a very similar question. If you adversely possess a property that's subject to an easement, you take a subject to that easement. I think you do. I mean, I mean. I don't remember. Remember that list of all the ways to terminate an easement? Did they list adverse possession as one of them? Can you just double check that? I don't think they did, right? My memory serves. So I don't think adversely possessing terminates the easement. Yet it would seem to say that, well, let me put it this way. Adversely possessing doesn't get rid of the covenant, it just makes the burden not run. So a covenant without a burden is like, what's the point, right? If the covenant might exist in theory, but you're not subject to the burden, then who cares? You do whatever you want. Is this making sense? These are hard questions. These are not easy questions. We're at an hour in, but that's about where we want to be. Zach?
I'm really contemplating this. This is almost kind of a ship of Theseus sort of thing.
Can you explain to everyone what that is? I know what that is, but explain to everyone else.
The metaphor that you replace each individual plank on a ship every time it comes into port. At what point does it stop being the original ship? I'm imagining this with my car in place of this vague estate, right? So if adverse possession works mechanically by destroying the existing estate and creating a new one, then if somebody adversely possesses my car, then it blinks out of existence and a new identical one is created for them. It's not the same car. It looks the same. And
well, that's why I don't know that I agree that when you adversely possess, it creates a new title. That might be correct as a legal matter, but you take it subject to the restrictions you find. So I don't know if this is actually like Ship of Theseus is actually a new car or just the old car with the new owner. Or the ghost cat, if you will. Is it the original cat or is it the ghost cat? Who knows? AJ. I try. Yeah. Well, look, you could answer consistently that there is no vertical privity, but there is privity for the benefit. In other words, there is no privity for the burden, but there is privity for the benefit to run. You could say that consistently. These are. I'm going to email the editors for this the next couple of days. I'll tell you what they say. Yeah, maybe I'm just missing something. But Emma, what do you think? I know it says that. Right? But my difficulty with that is there is no real covenant law, though. Right?
Okay, yeah, so
What
are we even talking about?
I mean, so let me see your book. I read that and I was sort of just wincing at that one, right? So, all right. Right. So, I mean, the difficulty with that is there is no real covenant, right? The book says without horizontal privity, there's no real covenant. So maybe they're saying as a matter of contract. I have to go check that in. But I got you. All right. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I would say it does not make the covenant go away, but if the burden doesn't run, then it's a covenant without any teeth. Zach.
I want to take your point that at the bottom of 842 and top of 843, the book says the burden of a real covenant does not run to that is not enforced with the last law against an adverse possessor because an adverse possessor does not succeed to the original owner's estate to take the new title by operation of law.
I know that. I know it says that. Yeah. Well, I know it says that, right? But there's also the point of whether you're subject to a covenant, which you might be as well. In other words, the book says that, and that's the book's view. I don't doubt that. You don't like it.
I'm a little confused by what you mean about which depends on there being a covenant or not, because it's a given in the sentence that there is one.
No, I'm sorry. Let me say it again. The book definitely says I told you that's the book's view, right? That by operation of law, there's a new title created, right? But we also say that when there's adverse possession, you take it subject to the terms of the person you're squatting from. So the person had a life estate, you're not getting a fee simple, you're taking a fee simple. So to simply say you take a new title, I think that's one way of looking at it, but not the only way of looking at it.
And it does specify burden of a real covenant. And we're talking about benefit.
Well, we're talking about benefit with question 7. Okay. You guys get this topic. If you're poking holes, you're getting this topic. You may not be happy with it, If you just want to be safe and go what the book says, that's fine. I will not begrudge you.
So should, sorry.
You can raise your hand. That's
On the
fine.
exam, would you prefer we do like both views and just say your view and that view?
I don't know that you have to. If with regard to the burden running, I think you can simply say there's a new estate created.
Okay, so
right
don't
there.
try to argue it
Yeah.
both ways, just pick
Yeah.
one and go with it.
But let me give you one last point. Throughout all these questions, don't forget equitable servitude. That even if you cannot sue based on the real covenant, if there's sufficient notice, you can sue based on equitable servitude, which makes all these questions just, again, like an infinite regress. All right, good discussion. If you stick with the book, I'm not going to mark you wrong. Just I don't always agree with the book. Sorry, Emma. You're reading the book correctly. Just I don't know if I agree. Like, I don't understand how I know they say that. How you can have a benefit running in the absence of real covenant law. In other words, you don't actually create the real covenant. How can the benefit run? Do you have a
No, because to me, I'm like, well, what's benefit?
what's there, right? I mean, I had a student in my morning section made that same point. I'm like, well, the book says that, but I just don't see how. I don't know what you have though. In the absence of horizontal privity, you have nothing. You don't actually have any sort of servitude. You have just a contract. All right, I'll let you know what they say. All right, can we move on? All right. Equitable servitudes are much simpler than real covenants. Okay? They're much simpler. Why? You don't have to deal with privity. Right? Let me show you the diagram I made for an equitable servitude. It's really easy. There's like no arrows on it. Right? Where is it? That's over here. Sorry. Right. There's a diagram of equitable servitude. There are no arrows. it's just notice, right? So the first requirements are the same. You need to have excuse me, an intent to bind successors, number one. And number two, you need a restriction that touches and concerns the land. We'll talk about what that touch concern means for the Neponsit case in a moment. But the third element is not about privity, right? The third element is about notice. And specifically, does the owner of the servient estate have notice that there's this restriction? There's this promise. Notice can be actual, that is, someone actually tells you about it. Notice can be constructive, that is, you sort of gather facts from the environment. So imagine you're in a community with 150 one-family houses, single-family houses. You might think, I wonder if there's some restriction limiting this to one-family houses. Maybe I shouldn't build a factory here, right? If there is notice, the court can come in and enforce the promise, even if you don't meet the requirements of privity. So again, all the stuff we've been talking about sort of washes away with equitable servitudes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Did you raise your hand? That's okay. All right. Yes, Tamara. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All right. Everyone okay with this so far? Okay. So we have two cases today. The first one is these cases you probably hated from contracts, old English speak, right? Maybe give you the flashbacks. So Tulk v. Moxhay. Again, this was a case in England. The rules for covenants are very different there. This is a case brought in the Court of Chancery, that is the Court of Equity, and therefore they were seeking equitable remedies. Tulk owned, I think it's pronounced Leicester Square. It's spelled like weird, but Leicester Square in London. And Tulk conveyed the garden, and there was a promise, a deed stated that it will be maintained as a square garden and pleasure ground, whatever that means, right? This is the 1800s, whatever, right? It's for, walking and seeing the birds. You guys have warped minds. Okay. Was the horizontal privity? In America, the answer would be yes. That is, the promise was created, when the land was conveyed, right? So actually in America, this would have been a real covenant law. But in England, it's all different. They only have horizontal privity for the landlord-tenant relationship. It's kind of weird, right? So there's no horizontal privity. Elms, who purchased the garden, didn't keep it for long. There were a series of transactions, and eventually Moxhay acquired the garden. Now, the deed to Moxhay did not have the restriction about maintaining the garden, but Moxhay had notice of the promise from the original deed. Again, were they in vertical privity, Elms and Moxhay? Yes, he acquired a fee simple. So in America, this is a straight up real covenant, can be enforced without any difficulty. But in England, they have to go to the doctrine of equity. The court offered a few reasons why they would enforce the promise as a matter of equity. First, the court said that if you don't enforce it, the servitude is worthless. Well, yeah, of course, it's always true, right? Anytime if a promise is not enforced, it becomes worthless. So not much going on there. The next point I think makes more sense. If you sell a fee simple without any covenants, unencumbered, the price will be higher. If you sell a piece of land with various encumbrances, you can't use it for this, you can't use it for that, the price will be lower, right? Would it be fair to allow Elms, for example, to buy at a lower cost with the servitude and then pass off to Moxhay without the covenant at a higher price? The court says no, that would not be fair. All right. The next argument I think also makes sense, right? There was notice. And as a matter of equity, if you know you can't do something and you choose to do it anyway, that's on you, right? The courts of equity don't like when people in bad faith just say, you know what? It wasn't in my deed, so I'm going to go and build whatever my pleasure garden, right? Therefore, the court says we will enforce the promise. Okay. This was an early case that illustrated how an equitable servitude worked. It didn't, I don't think it invented it, or if it did, it might have been like kind of based on older stuff. But this was a very important case, so important that the Neponsit court cited it almost like 80 years later in New York. Okay, that's Tulk. Questions on Tulk? Not terribly important or terribly long, but there. Okay, the next case though is a little bit longer, so we'll spend some more time on it. That's why I want to rush through Tulk. Anyone want to give me the facts in Neponsit, please? All right, you are my go-to. Let's go.
So originally in 1911, the plaintiff developed a tract of land for a residential community, which was the Neponsit Property Owners Association. And in 1970, they originally conveyed the property at issue here to Robert Dyer, who, after a string of covenances, sold it to the defendant. And in each of the deeds, the successive deeds, there was a covenant that stated there was an annual fixed charge from the resident to be paid on the 1st of May that extends to the heirs, successors, and assigns, whether it is the homeowners association or each resident for each one of those tracts. And that the money that they pay is going to be used to maintain roads, paths, parks, beaches, sewers, and for public purposes. From there, once it was sold, there was the defendants wanted to use the tract, or they looked like they didn't pay it, or they didn't want to pay it anymore. And there were, so of course they sued. Okay,
good. We'll go get the litigation. Thank you so much. Very good. All right, so some background here. Today we take zoning for granted, right? Under zoning, the government might say all the houses must be one-family houses with so much grass between you, so many square feet. You only use certain colors, certain paints, and so on, right? Zoning is a modern innovation, and it wasn't until the 1920s that the Supreme Court said you can even have zoning. We'll do a case a couple weeks called Village of Euclid, where the Supreme Court said it was constitutional, you could have zoning. But before this Supreme Court case, there was really no zoning codes in cities. They were very tenuous. So instead of having government-run zoning, you would have these subdivisions, which would operate in a similar fashion. That is, you'd have a common owner slice up all of his land, put all these restrictive covenants on it, saying you have to have a house of a certain size, this many square feet, this many floors, only one family, and so on, right? But these arrangements were very risky. Why? In order to make these arrangements work, money has to be paid. You would have what's called an assessment or a fee placed on each property, right? And who would get that money? Not the owner of the dominant estate. The money would be paid instead to a third party corporation, right? The HOA was a corporation. Under the law of covenants, could you even do that? Could you have the money going to a third party who is not the dominant tenement? Because usually, if there's money being paid, everyone would split it because everyone's dominant. You'd have to have the money divvied up from everyone in the community, and that would not work well. The other problem with this is the second prong of adverse possession. I'm sorry, of covenants, which is the touch and concern element. In England, the only covenants that were enforceable were those that were called negative. That is, that they restricted what you can do. You can't do this, you can't do that. An affirmative covenant would not touch and concern the land, as you have to pay money. So those would not run with the land at all. So there were risks to these HOAs. First off, that the money is being paid to a third party was not the dominant tenement. And second, was there even a valid covenant at all? Did this touch and concern the land? So I have to admit, this is one of my least favorite cases in the book. I don't like it because the court just sort of blows past these obstacles. They just like a linebacker just knocks them over. Says whatever, right? Society, make way, progress is coming through. Common law, you should die, right? And they strangled the common law. They buried it in Long Island shore. Fun fact: Pearson v. Post actually arose on Long Island shore. So actually, it was probably close to where Pearson arose. I never put that together, but they were close by. Beaches of Long Island. Go figure, right? Where the common law goes to live and to die. So another factor of this case is it was probably a test case. It was probably a setup. So what happened was the original owner went to foreclosure. The bank took over the property, and the bank conveniently forgot to make a payment. Does anyone believe that? Nope. No, I think the book sort of hints at this, right? The bank was probably deliberately not making the assessment payment to try to trigger a case in which the courts would authorize, would bless this entire arrangement. I almost call it a scheme. This arrangement with the HOA. All right. So the court walks through the elements, right? So first off, did the original grantor intend to bind successors? Absolutely. There is horizontal privity here. And oh, by the way, there's vertical privity also. Right. Why? Because when the bank foreclosed, they stepped into the shoes of the prior owner, right? They assumed this entire estate. There's vertical privity, the covenant still exists. So look, the benefit runs, the burden's going to run. There's horizontal privity. Don't we have a real covenant here? The trick is the second prong. Does the covenant touch and concern the land? Right? At common law, the answer was clearly no. In England, this would not have worked back in the day. Why? This is what you know is an affirmative obligation that you have to pay money. You have to give money to some, who knows what, some corporation somewhere, right? This is not a case where you simply benefit by being on a dominant tenement. The money's being put towards someone else. What is the New York Court of Appeals response to this? Well, the common law is narrow. We want a more liberal, more flexible rule, which is what they always say. It's always the same thing. You know why this class sort of grates on me? It's the same thing in every case, right? Whether it's California or New Jersey or New York, it's the same script. Oh, we need a more flexible rule. It's always the same rationale, right? So what test do they put forward? The test they put forward is, does the covenant affect the legal relations of the parties? Does the covenant affect the legal relations of the parties? Right? And that is both advantages and burdens. At common law, it was only burdens, negative. For both advantages and burdens, pros and cons. Almost anything, almost any restriction on land will satisfy this test. Just about everything. Right? Almost any restriction will satisfy this test. What would not satisfy this touch and concern test? The court says if there was a promise to pay money that is disconnected with the use of land, that's disconnected, then it does not touch and concern. So I mean, imagine the assessment was, please give us money so we can fund some property in Nebraska. Okay, all right, that's probably a little bit too far removed, right? But so long as the money is being spent on anything affecting the property in Long Island, it's probably covered. So if the money is being used to build a public park, well, I have no kids, I don't need a park, doesn't matter, right? The money is being used to build a swimming pool, I don't go swimming, doesn't matter, right? Anything or just about anything that affects the property will be covered. So really, under the modern law, and the New York law is the modern position, the second element is basically wiped out, right? Everything touches and concerns everything. It has no actual teeth anymore. So I tell you, the first element's basically satisfied automatically. The second element is probably satisfied automatically. Then all the juice is on the third element. Okay, everyone with me so far? All right, so now let's go to the third element. Here, is there horizontal privity? I think so. The HOA was created, I'm sorry, the covenants were created when they divided up the land. So there's horizontal privity. Is there vertical privity? I think so. The bank foreclosed and succeeded to the same estate as the prior owner. So there's horizontal privity and vertical privity. The burden runs. What's the big deal, right? But the court does something else. The court goes on to say that you don't always need privity to enforce a real covenant law. Is that right? I didn't think that was the rule, but now that's the rule. They said so, right? The court says you do not always need privity to enforce a real covenant law. They say covenants can be enforced through equitable principles. Equitable principles. Wait a minute. Does the court here say that this covenant is actually an equitable servitude? No, they don't. Why? Because you can't get damages with an equitable servitude. They get an injunction. So they didn't actually say this is an equitable servitude. They sort of just mushmashed it, right? They said, well, even if you don't have privity, you can justify a covenant based on equity, which again eliminates the third factor as well. So again, the benefit would run, the burden would run. Here's the important part though. Who does the benefit run to? Does the benefit run to the dominant tenement, that is the other neighbors? Or does the benefit run to the HOA? The benefit here runs to the corporation, the HOA. Not a person, not a property, a corporation. Remember I told you last week there's no such thing as a covenant in gross, where the covenant benefits one person? This looks a heck of a lot like that, doesn't it? Where it's a covenant for the benefit of a third party that's not tied to land. There is no covenant gross. Don't you dare ever say it. You'll be laughed out of court, right? But maybe you won't be. I don't know. But what the court does here is effectively create a covenant in gross. They say that the benefit can flow to someone who's not the dominant tenement. Because remember, there's no dominant tenement within gross. Remember that one? And not only to a person, but to a corporation itself, which administers the homeowner association. So in the end, the court just blocks out huge chunks of the law, and they just sort of wipe it away, right? Touch and concern is whether the law is benefited or burden, makes no difference. And the benefit can run not just to the dominant estate, the benefit can run to the corporation HOA, third party, not associated with it. So even if you have horizontal and vertical privity, it doesn't matter. They will let the benefit run to a third party. And that's the case. Yeah, I don't like this case. Maybe I'm old school. I don't know. I like rules. In this case, just whatever, rules don't matter, right? It's obvious here the court doesn't want to stop the HOAs, because if the court actually enforced property law rigorously, these would be illegal, right? You couldn't do it, right? If you actually stuck with the common law, you cannot have an assessment paid to a third party. It wouldn't work. The burden would not run. The benefit would not run. You just couldn't do this. So this entire economic system was premised on deviating from property law. But again, there's nothing saying that property law can't change. Just we should be cognizant of how the court goes about doing it. Excuse me. All right, questions on Neponsit? Questions on Neponsit? No? All right, let me summarize a bit, wrap up, and you guys can go on your break a little bit earlier. We have our diagrams here, right? All right. Actually, it's over here. Sorry, I had put it in the other class's notes, so I apologize for that. I just put it in yours as well. So we have our diagrams. When we're dealing with the regular run-of-the-mill covenant question, always keep in mind to create the covenant, you must have horizontal privity. For the burden to run, you need horizontal privity and vertical privity. For the benefit to run, you need horizontal privity and something, whatever that happens to be. And for the benefit and burden to run, you must have to go through all three: horizontal, vertical, and whatever this privity is called on the benefit side. Okay. Hammer? Yeah, we skipped it. Yeah, don't worry about it. I didn't do my other class either, so I'll keep you guys on the same level. All right, so that's the general one. Then we have what we call the mutually restrictive covenants. Right, this is like the first question I asked you. What's important to remember here is that both Whiteacre and Blackacre are both benefited and burdened. They're both benefited and burdened. So if you ever want to know, does the burden run down to Bob to Carl? Does the burden run from Amy to Diane? You have to do the vertical privity analysis on both sides. So in any question I ask you about an HOA, right, keep in mind that burdens run both sides and benefits run both sides. If the burden runs, the benefits can run automatically. So it's actually a very easy analysis, right? If you do the more serious, the more serious vertical privity analysis, the other one's satisfied. But it's possible that the benefit may run, but the burden may not. That was the question we did earlier. You might have one or the other. If you got burden, you got both of them. But if you have benefit, you may not have burden. Does that make sense? I know this topic, it's like future interest, right? You think you get it, and then you guys start spinning. I think you guys are doing actually pretty well. I'm pleased so far. All right, and the third one, the third chart I want to show you is the equitable servitude chart, which is how clean this is and neat. It's just, everything's easy, right? Because just about notice and equity and fairness, and everyone loves each other, kumbaya, and so yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, Casey. It's already there. I'm sorry. I thought the reason why is I was up late last night doing work, and I put in one. I forgot to put in the other, but I just put in yours. So I'm sorry for that. I apologize. I usually put them at the same time, and I made some tweaks, and I forgot to copy it over. Yeah, I was up late last night. Things like, oh man, these questions. Maybe I'm not so sure. Like, I was like doubting myself. So it's that's how class prep goes. No matter how many times you teach it, you always see new stuff and sort of look at it differently. Look at my old videos. I'm sure I had something different last year. Just ignore that. Pretend this is a different Josh. This is COVID Josh. He was under the influence. Because the pandemic made me do it. All right. Anything else? All right, I'll turn the exit poll on. If you hate what I said, tell me. But I'll try and get some clarity for you from the editors of the casebook, and we'll see what we got on Tuesday. Okay. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you all soon.